Well, it's fortuitous, as Craig said. He does these CEO surveys, he gets the answers, and then doesn't really have a chance to ask the why if a question or a finding. So we have two CEOs that we can ask the why to here. So let me start right with the presentation you just saw. Was there something from the findings that really struck you as either surprising or particularly important?
So as a small company, we have plants in the U.S. and we actually have a plant in China. And our plant in China is our most expensive high-volume manufacturing facility. It's higher than our plant in Thailand or Mexico. And that was, that's just raw data. My plant in Mexico is by far cheaper than China, about half. So it's amazing how quickly that plant has increased its wage rates. And just give you a figure, over the last 10 years, the average increase in our direct labor rates have gone up by over 11% a year, every year for 10 years in China. So you just think about how quickly that erodes. Somebody mentioned 3% compounded, try 11% compounded, right? What used to be good is no longer good. So it is a difficult situation. In my situation, though, my customers are in China, so I'm delivering material from my plant to my customers. I have to be there in China for that particular facility. But it does bring quite a bit of challenges with it.
I can imagine. Now, Mauro, Brazil did not do that well in the index there.
Yeah.
Did that surprise you?
No, it's not surprising me. It's expected, and I think, of course, this sort of measuring in general has some bias of overshooting. Brazil being in 2014 in the 8th place, I don't believe that. And then now the position is 29. Then I think, of course, it's overshooting. We can't change from one year to another. In this case, more 13 positions. It's difficult to believe. Then I think, in general, I think all this competitiveness index, they have difficulty to measure the emerging country competitiveness. That's a difficulty because the regulatory scheme is not already mature. Then it's very volatile. The policy can change the regulation, the rules of the game. Then this is one major difficulty in my view. In Brazil is not out of this problem. Then I think this is one point. The second point is that the macroeconomic cycle, I think it's more severe in the emerging economies in general. I'm not saying about China. China is a very outlier in this discussion, in my view. But the macroeconomic perspective, I think they change very rapidly depending on the economic cycle. Then we have to be very careful. And I think that infrastructure is another difficulty. When we are growing very fast, in general, these countries, they don't have enough room for maneuver in terms of excess infrastructure, I would say, for growth. Then when you are, in the case of Brazil, our shortage of infrastructure is something that is very clear. Mm-hmm. Then a very steady growth in the last cycle, of course, hurt now the economy. Then you have a political disturbance as we are having now. It's a mix-up of political difficulty with macroeconomic changing and infrastructure that is not enough established, fixed, a regulatory problem. Then That, I think, in my view, this is the reason why emerging countries is very difficult to be stable in the index, in the competitiveness index. That's a major difficulty. I think one way of thinking a improvement of this sort of analysis is to separate what is the mature economies, the developed economies, from the emerging economies, because the parameters are so different that it's quite difficult to put together so different countries with institutions which are different. The economy is quite different. Then if you can look at the emerging panel and the developed countries panel, I think it can be clearer what is going on.
As we heard this morning, the U.S. has a fair share of its own political challenges and opportunities as well. But
Yeah.
were you surprised at the projection of the U.S. to continue to move up to number one as the most appealing manufacturing economy?
No, not for me. We continue to use, and you look at John Deere or Lockheed or anybody, where's your source of innovation? Source of innovation has been the U.S. Even for companies like mine that have manufacturing facilities overseas, the source of innovation's here. My biggest concern, quite frankly, is how you protect that source. How do you protect that innovation? Because as far as I'm concerned, there's two companies out there in the world. There's the ones that know they've been breached, and the ones that don't know.
I think that from the U.S. perspective, it's not fair a comparison straight on with China, because China they don't follow the rule of law. They don't follow the rule of market. Then it's quite difficult to compare one typical market economy as the U.S. economy with a economy is not exactly a market economy. That the criteria that they use to compete is quite different from the parameters of a market economy. Then this is a difficulty, and it's unfair seeing that the U.S. is not on the top. For me, it has been always on the top. If you look in details, I can't believe that China can surpass the U.S. in the terms of a competitiveness index. You see, we have to discuss better this, because we are using the same measure for different rules of the game. Then this is a provocative point that I'd like to put on the table.
Terrific, thank you. We talked, and I mentioned a minute ago in my opening remarks about the U.S.'s newfound or current abundance of natural gas and oil. Do you feel like this is obviously an opportunity? Are we taking advantage of it? Are we doing, what should we be doing that we're not, perhaps?
Well, maybe investing in our future. I think we are taking advantage of it. Sometimes there's unintended consequences of some of that, but it is giving us a little bit more time to look at biofuels and things like that can be sustainable in the future. In my industry, small engine market, ethanol absolutely ruins small engines. So everybody that has a small engine at home, I don't care what it powers, that doesn't start after a year or two, that's ethanol. You can thank ethanol for that engine not starting. That's an unintended consequence of introduction of that particular biofuel. I think with the low prices and things like that allows our economy to get back on its feet, will give us time to look at all the unintended consequences and develop alternatives.
I think some people have referred to this opportunity as a window of opportunity for the U.S. with low-cost energy. Other countries will eventually catch up or find ways. So I guess, is your feeling that we've done what we should do to take advantage of this window? Is the window closing?
I have a very particular opinion about that, because I think it's about time for the U.S. to open its energy market. I don't think that any sort of restriction related to crude oil and to gas is, in the long run, it's not good for the U.S. In my view, it should be a commodity as other commodities for the sustainability of the competitiveness of the U.S. manufacturing would be a better and realistic condition than a restrictive market for gas and oil. Then my view is that it should be freed because the long-term results are better. We can open room for renewables. Nowadays, the comparative advantage of the gas is so much higher that I think is hindering the opportunities for the renewables in the U.S. Here is the place where were made most of the investment in renewables. And if you have a relative price manipulation as it is now, I think it is not good for the future of the energy market in the country. I don't think that is good. It's a short-term gain. I don't think it can be maintained in the long run. I know that there is a problem of ship cost in relation to the gas, but of course, you have a restriction. The way to overcome this shipping cost is longer than we could expect. That's my particular view in this respect.
Matt, any?
No, like I said, I think it's good for the economy that we have that. I agree that it would be better to have it open. I guess I'm not terribly equipped to say which would be ultimately the better solution. I don't think it's a window that's closing anytime soon. The technology that we're using, fracking and all that's well known to the world. They're going to be using that as well. So I think the advantage it has for many industries in the U.S. is it is going to keep the price of energy low, and there's whole industries that rely on that. You look at RVs, recreational vehicles, or those kinds of things, whether it's a big motorhome on the road or a boat or something like that relies on lower energy prices. Those were in a nosedive just a few years ago, and now they've resurged to levels that they haven't been to in a decade or so.
You mentioned fracking, and obviously there's we've talked this morning about a lot of policy issues and challenges in the U.S. Chad gave a great talk about some of the technologies and innovations that are out there. Are there technology challenges or roadblocks or revolutions that are there that you see in your market that we need to try to address or need to occur in order to get to the next phase of our energy and manufacturing capability?
In industry that I run in small engines, so think of things smaller than an automobile. That's going through a resurgence right now where you're going from internal combustion gas engines to electric for smaller engines and fuel-injected gaseous or gasoline engines. So that revolution's happening right now, but it's really market forces that are driving that. Mm-hmm. When people are used to going to Home Depot and paying $80 or $90 for a string trimmer and it doesn't work after a year or two, they throw it away and go get a new one. They don't take it to a small engine repair shop. I mean, I think everybody's old enough in here to remember when those existed. Not many of them are left, right? There's a few dealers out there. The reason for that is everything's disposable. It's not repairable. So with the advent of these biofuels and things like that destroying anything exposed to the air, the fuel-injected technology will proliferate.
One thing that I'd like to say is that back into the theme, the subject of opening the energy market, I would just list 3 things that the United States has a very clear leadership in relation to other countries. which with a freed energy market, they could explore in the advantage of the competitiveness of the manufacturing here. Internet of Things, clear leadership, then with energy open market. These are the opportunities for this entering into the energy business, the modern business would be great, because this is linked with energy efficiency. Then in order to use Internet of Things, the agenda of energy efficiency is very strong for business opportunity. And the other one is distributed generation. This is the future of the world. And the United States has a very clear edge in relation to this technology. If we have a open approach to the energy market, I think we have three key technologies in the field that the US is a clear leader in the world. Then why not to open this market to exactly to consolidate the leadership of the country? Of course, I'm speaking also from the viewpoint of an integrated energy company. Is the largest integrated company in Brazil, and for us is very very important this leadership of the United States. For us, it is very strategic that the United States be placed in these key technologies. Otherwise, we will have other players that can put difficulty for several economies, including the Brazilian economy. Then I think we urge the leadership of the United States in these technologies. Otherwise, we will face other problems along this road.
I want to follow up on one of the issues of competitive advantage for the U.S. I do want to open it up for any questions that anybody might have. Please just raise your hand. We have microphones out there. We have a little less than 5 minutes to go, so it would be great to get one or two questions. But as you're thinking, obviously we just heard from Craig that talent was the number one attraction for businesses. But at the same time, we also heard earlier today how the number of actual manufacturing jobs over the last several years has been dropping. Automation is creating new challenges. Is it an opportunity or is it a challenge from a workforce perspective? If I'm a manufacturing worker, am I worried or excited?
From my perspective, you should be excited, because one of the things that changes the game on U.S. competitiveness is our ability to be very flexible and change products, high volume, low mix. If you're going to do the same thing, I think somebody mentioned at dinner last night about having a boring job doing the same thing all the time. You say, no, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, you don't want to do that either, because that's not a way to have a good standard of living. B, anybody can do that. There's no differentiation there. And so then it's a drive to the bottom in terms of who's willing to do less. I'm a big fan of automation and being able to switch over very quickly from one task to another. And so I see that as that continues, that'll play into the U.S. strengths because of our ability to be innovative.
Yeah, of course, for me, the U.S. Can't be afraid of automation, because talent is something that is very valued here. Again, this is you see, I think an asset of the country that when you put this automation agenda, people with talent, of course, will be in the leadership. Then no doubt that this is a very strong point for the country.
Deborah, yes.
some areas of collaboration between the U.S. and Brazil in the energy space. I know CEMIG is a huge energy company. You are investing and have partnerships here with some renewable companies. Could you share a little bit about the business opportunities for collaboration in that space?
Well, we are, Deborah, thank you very much. We are having a very strong collaboration inside the United States. Edison is our major partner here. We have already a joint company here with Edison. Our floating 70% are traded in the New York exchange. Then we are already very well placed in the US. I think the major field for collaboration is related to the large agenda for renewables. Solar, all the business related to solar. For example, distributed generation is something that is fantastic. In our case of CEMIG, we have 12 million consumers. Then this for Edison, for example, which has a a strong leadership in solar development. This is a very strong market. We already have the infrastructure. Everything is done. Then I think in the field of renewables and efficiency, are the great opportunities that we can get together. And as I said, there are other players coming to the world market. And for us, it's very beneficial if we could work with American companies for several reasons that you know. We have a Western mind. This facilitates a lot to work together. But you see, if the country, if the US, the American companies, if they don't go in a very active behavior, other players are coming. That's the Chinese are doing exactly this right now in Brazil. Then it's my view, it's a window of opportunity. But other players are already in the market, on the market. Then I think previously someone said this sort of thing. Now we have several players around the world. It's not only the US having time to decide if they will go with other companies around the world. That's different.
Thank you so much. And I see our time has come to an end, so would you please join me in thanking my panelists?